Would you like to win some free fishing tackle? Well, this month we just gave away a brand new spinning reel, or one-of-a-kind spinning reel. This next month we're giving away a ton more tackle. We do it every single month. It's just one of the perks of being an insider member. For you current members, make sure to go log into the community. That's community.saltstrong.com. That's the private community we built. We've just added a lot of new stuff in there if you haven't been in there in a while. And there's a new fishing report going up about every 5 minutes. We have regional tips in there. We have some new regional guides that we are adding in as well to share their smart fishing game plans. And of course, if you're not a member, what the heck are you waiting on? Someone to take you by the hand, help you save time and money every single month on your fishing. We're the only online fishing club that guarantees you will catch more fish and save money on your tackle, or it's completely free. Go to saltstrong.com right now to sign up. And current members, I'll see you in the community.
It's in my soul. Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live stream and podcast. My name is Rich Natoli. I am the host of this show, and I'm joined as always by the lovely and talented Ed Gobo from Captain Hank's Tackle. Ed, how you doing?
What's going on, Rich? How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's a rare Sunday night live stream because of Halloween. Yes. And we didn't want to, people, guests and viewers have kids. They have grandkids, they have neighbors, neighborhoods, and in some neighborhoods, they have the treats for adults as you walk around with the kids, and people don't want to miss out on the free beer. So we're jumping in tonight, and we're going to go in and we're going to talk about light tackle blackfish, or tog. And I'm really excited about that. Ed, is there anything you want to update people on before we get rolling, or do you want to just roll right into it?
No, I'm excited for this topic. The light tackle tog is one of my favorites, so I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. So with that, man, we're going to jump right in here, and we're going to welcome back to the stream Captain John Halkias, Jigging Jerks on YouTube. John, how you doing?
What's going on, Rich? Ed, how are you guys?
What's up? How are you?
Good.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to this one. You, just to give people a heads up, you've been out doing a lot of blackfishing lately, and you're a little tired today.
Yeah,
going back to back.
Yeah, we did. I was mentioning earlier we had a fish finders. Those of you who are watching who know Garrett Weir, he's got this great group called the Fish Finders Community, where he sets up great trips on top boats up the coast, up and down the coast, Maryland to Rhode Island for different species. And he had one of his high roller tog trips this last Thursday up in Newport, Rhode Island. And gentleman won $7,000, primarily because it was 3 Calcuttas. He had an 11-pounder on the first drop. Wow. And that carried him through. I finished with 1 keeper, so not my best day. And again, when I'm a one-trick pony, when I'm not in my element, light tackle, blackfishing, I have no shot.
We should hook him up with Frank.
Yeah, you should be hanging out with Frank Mahalik. He'll show you the other end of it, the offshore trophy tog.
Yes, I know. I've heard a lot of stories about his prowess with tog. But then I had charters the last couple of days. I came back on the ferry 9 p.m. Friday night. Charter yesterday, charter today. So if I look a little tired, it's for that reason. I feel like I need a day off tomorrow from my regular job just to catch up from 3 straight days of fishing and going crazy with the ferries back and forth from Connecticut and Rhode Island.
I'll tell you what, though, it is a great way to be tired. Yeah, that's satisfying, the satisfying exhaustion. And here, let's show this.
Oh, there's me.
There you go.
So besides being the greatest human being on earth, G had what we call the comeback today. The boat limited before he had a keeper, and he never quit. I think he finished with 5. G, keep me honest. And he had a nice big one right at the end. That's the one we put up on Instagram.
Very nice.
Awesome.
You never give up, man. If you have the slow start, doesn't mean you're not going to have the great finish. And that's what fishing is. And that's what togging is. It's not always a consistent, bailing double digit after double digit. It's sometimes you got to work through, build that bite, and the results come in the end. So good job, G, just staying on it throughout the day. But let's jump right into this. I know that, we've got a lot of people that do the offshore deep water togging, right? And then we talked about that with Frank Mahalik, a couple weeks ago. But this is different, right? So when you're talking light tackle tog fishing, which, by the way, is what I do primarily, what is it that you're specifically looking at? How would you describe in general terms the type of spots that you're looking for when you're doing the light tackle?
So critical is that the current has to cooperate. I mean, clearly you need to find the structure, but that's a given. I'm going to presume we all know that you're not going to be fishing in sand and there's no current, so maybe there's a chance at a tog. No, you got to find the structure. So last 2 days I didn't film for YouTube because we were fishing spots that would have been readily, people will know where you are. Right. And look, there's people that know those spots, but I'd rather not broadcast that to the world. So no filming, but besides structure, you're looking for a spot where somehow the current allows you to drop down with an ounce or less. And that's sort of, I don't carry any jigs on my boat over an ounce. So every spot we fish from October 15 to November 21, 1 ounce or less. No broomsticks on the boat and no jigs over an ounce on the boat. And there are a ton of those spots. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, jetties. Typically, you can get away with that. Things like lighthouses, like we fished the lighthouse today, and we actually fished both sides of it. When the current turned, we ducked the other way behind it where the current was blocking it. We started on the one side in the morning. We had, I think, 9 or 10 fish there relatively quickly. Then we went to the other side. We had to battle the north wind on the other side. We didn't do as well as on the south side of the lighthouse. And then we moved to a jetty. And again, spots where you can get away with dropping a light jig and they have structure.
Right. And when you're talking, so what depth are you looking at ideally? I mean, 1 ounce, you're not going to get a lot of depth there.
So the first couple spots, we were in that 10 to 13 foot range. Mm-hmm. Same with the jetty, but we ended the day at a spot in about 25 feet of water. Yeah. But a lot of the videos I do show where I'm fishing a beach, I'm in 35 to 40 feet.
Right.
And we're able to get down sometimes with a half ounce there.
But that's about it. I mean, once you get over that,
I was on Thursday. I jigged in 70 feet when the current at the beginning of the trip. That's when I got my only keeper. But chances are in those deeper waters, you're going to have periods where the tide is moving that you're not going to be able to do it all day like we can. Like that 35 to 40 foot area that I love to fish. I don't care about tide. There's never a time where that at least a 1 ounce won't go down. And typically a 3/4 or even a half ounce will get you down.
Wow. I wish we had currents like that.
Yeah, we don't have them often. I was fishing last week in an inlet and it was about 30 feet, 35 feet. And I was using a 3/4 the whole time. I was using one of Ed's jigs and it was fine. It was actually straight up and down. It was kind of crazy. I was barely moving. Of course, there was no wind either, which made it a little bit easier, but tucked around the outside of the jetty and you get in that little eddy there. Mm-hmm. And, if anything, the water was coming backwards on me, as it spun around. But
that happened to us today at the beginning when we switched spots. We had the incoming, but the water there was moving like the outgoing, but the water was moving like the incoming, because you could actually see the water hooking around the lighthouse and kind of moving the wrong way.
Yeah, and I'll say that for me is a great sign of a spot for tog, because of the way that current seam comes around and forms that eddy. It's pushing anything off of those, and crabs are coming around and they're getting spun back towards that structure again. Especially a jetty. So I love fishing those seams or inside the seams. Actually, seams typically I'll fish for something like a striped bass or a fluke or something like that, but when you're talking tog, I get into that still area and I just love it. You end up spinning around. It can be a little difficult to maintain your positions, but it's typically a good spot. So, okay. So you were out, let's just call it, it's typically shallower water. You're not out offshore on 100 feet doing light tackle.
Shallower.
So it's shallower, which means
Tom Terrific. I'm looking at the comments. Clearly a Met fan. 10-pound line, that's the other critical thing. Every rod I have set up for light tackle togging is 10-pound. And again, that's because the area I fish, I'm not fishing wrecks. I'm not fishing some of the crazy structure you guys have down in the South Jersey, Delaware area. I'm not doing any of that. It's little boulder beds. And I can get away with 10-pound line as long as I have 4 or 5 feet of 30-pound fluoro. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm using 15, and it's more than enough. It's 100% more than enough, because I have no concerns when I'm hooking a tog on the light tackle in there. I mean, I've pulled in 8-pound sheep's head on that thing. On 15-pound. I've caught 9-pound tog on it. No big deal.
What I notice is when you break off, like if your jig gets stuck on the structure and you can't get it out, more often than not, the 30-pound fluoro will break and not the 10 pounds. So I don't know. To me, and look, if you're going to hit a rock with braid, I don't care if it's 30-pound braid or 10-pound braid, it's going to break. They are absolutely non-abrasive resistant. So,
right. And I want to bring up this comment real quick for people that are going to be listening. Why not go ahead and use 30-pound test then? I'm going to say my answer is 30-pound test is going to create a lot more drag in that water. So when you're dropping the lightest jig that you can, that 30-pound test is picking up that current and it's actually carrying it much more than if you're dropping 10-pound tests. It's just the line diameter has everything to do with it. And I used in the past 30-pound test, and I was basically using my offshore reel for the inshore tog, and I stopped doing that because it's just crazy when you're in 20 feet of water and you're scoping out so much because you can't get your half ounce down because there's just too much drag on there. Is that the reason that you're doing it?
Absolutely. The only reason I'm doing it. Yeah. I'd rather have more power, of course, but makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah. It's a big trade-off.
It's also that line floats too, especially braid. So also with the resistance and catching the water, it's also going to float and keep your jig from getting down quicker.
Now you said you're using 30-pound fluoro on the bottom?
30, yeah.
30? Okay. Ed, what are you using?
For mainline, I'm 15-pound J-Braid X8. So it's the 8 strand instead of the 4. 15-pound. And then I found this stuff. It's Nomad Designs. It's mono with a fluoro coating. So it's 20-pound, but it's extremely thin diameter. So that stuff's I've been using it all year for fluke and basically for everything, and it's been great.
Gotcha. And I'm using I use the regular Andy's mono 20-pound, and I want to make it clear why. I would not be using that if I were fishing primarily from a boat. But when you're in a kayak and you get snagged and you need to break off, which is another reason I don't want to use 30-pound. 30 pounds to break is a lot of leaning and weight distribution issues. And when you're fishing an inlet or heavy currents, you don't want to be tugging on something and then have it snap and fall to the left and upset yourself. I can't stand when the line doesn't break. So I want 20-pound leader, and it's always the 20-pound leader is breaking before the line. The only time I ever replace any cut any braid is when I replace the leader and I cut off the next couple of inches, before I retie. I never ever lose because the braid was parted. It's always that 20-pound leader, which is awesome. I'd rather lose one jig and a little bit of leader.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah. So why don't we talk? All right. So the spots. So you're looking at that depth. You're looking typically for boulder areas, and let's talk about the current though. Are you looking less current, more current, slack tide? What specifically are you looking for?
So for me, the best time seems to be right before and right after slack. Okay. But again, the spots I'm fishing, when I'm tucking behind a lighthouse, I'm good that whole tide cycle. When I'm fishing some of these jetties that I fish, I'm usually good the whole tide cycle. But I do see the whatever internal trigger the fish have, whatever, walking, the analogy I like to make, you're walking by a restaurant at 11 o'clock, you had breakfast at 9, the food may smell great, but you may not be hungry and you may not go inside and eat. But do that at 1 or 2 o'clock when you haven't eaten in a few hours and you're going to want to eat. And I think the fish have something similar, that they have their time. And to me, the time where we seem to get the bigger fish is before and after that slack period. It's almost like that slack is there. I'm full, the bait's able to hide. And once that current starts moving again and the bait starts getting swept out, the dinner bell goes off of them.
It's a good time to reposition. If it goes slack, it's a good time to reposition, get to the other side of the jetty. If the water's going to start coming the other way, get into the slower area. But you said you're not fishing wrecks though.
No.
So you're fishing mainly boulder fields and jetties. Are you fishing anything like seawalls or bridges or anything like that?
No.
Is it because you don't have them?
Exactly.
Like we do?
I don't have them by me.
Okay.
Makes sense. So, if they're not there, can't fish them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I'll put out there for those that do have these inshore bridges, which are, a lot of times in New Jersey, for example, it's the bridges from the mainland to the barrier islands, the causeway bridges. It can be an excellent spot to fish. And the jetties, actually, let me ask you this. How are you fishing the jetties? When you pull up in your boat, how are you fishing around those jetties? How are you positioning and where are you dropping?
I'm spot locking, usually at least a boat length and a half away. I'm seeing which way the boat positions itself, and then I'm adjusting accordingly. I get as close to that jetty as I can without having some wiggle room, because anybody who's had spot lock knows that maybe once every other trip, it might just shut off for some reason. And the last thing you want is to hit that jetty. So I give myself enough cushion, and then I tell my clients, we get on the side of the boat, whether it's the front, the back, the side, the starboard port side, and just pitch it 5 to 10 feet away from the jetty and wait for the bites, build the bite.
Right. Okay. Ed, is that how you're fishing the jetty?
I mean, I'm in the kayak, so I don't fish tog fish in the boat because we don't have spot lock, or I'm not skilled enough to double anchor, and I probably wouldn't do that in a boat at the jetty. Right. But with the kayaks, I'm fishing the seams and trying to stay in the eddies, out of the main current. But I mean, we're looking also too. We're scanning with our bottom readers, trying to find the ledges and stuff where they're hiding. So it's a little bit different tactic, I think.
Yeah, and I'm typically, like you said, John, I'm typically going up close to it. I mean, I'm getting up real close and I'm dropping in there. But what I end up doing, I find, is working my way backwards and fishing the drops next to the jetties. And, there are some around in the areas that I typically fish for tog where you go from the jetty and where it's dry rocks and you back up 5 feet and you're down, it's down to 15 feet. You back up a couple more feet and now you're down to 30 feet and then you're out to 40 feet. And sometimes I find that I'm actually catching them out, 20 yards off. It doesn't even look like I'm fishing anything near the jetty, but I'm still fishing the edge of the rocks on the bottom. And I think that a lot of people kind of miss that. They think they have to be right up in those rocks real tight, but you don't necessarily have to do that. Now you do end up, deep snags are much more difficult to get off though when you're 30 feet down, but are you doing that at all? Are you working your way back, or are you finding a spot and you're building the bite there?
It's the latter. We usually wind up working our way in. What I see is my structure is going to be different from your structure. I don't see that deep drop, the jetty's eye fish.
Okay.
It goes. I have my boat at 11 to 15 feet, and if I go 20 yards back, it's going to be 15 feet. It flattens out. So remember, these are man-made rock walls, and they're not necessarily rocky areas, the areas I fish. So, but you said build a bite. That's the thing I never understood. And this doesn't matter if you're light tackle togging or you're fishing deep. Guys who give up after 5-10 minutes and don't allow the bite to be built. You see it all the time. You see guys coming up next to you anchoring. They give up after 10-15 minutes, move to the next spot. I've been on boats like that, and I want to say something, but it's not your place necessarily to tell somebody else how to do their job. I don't understand it. That old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. I truly believe that about tog, that you don't just show up somewhere and immediately start catching fish. You get a couple little fish biting, you catch a couple shorts, but that commotion. Skinner had a video a few years ago of how there'd be a couple small fish and they would hit the bait and they would get the silt up, and next thing you know, the area was loaded with fish.
Right.
You really got to do that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and I think we talked about this on the last podcast, but once you have those fish under you, it's over for any other boat that comes near you. Somebody can anchor 20 yards to your port or starboard. They're wasting their time. They are absolutely wasting their time. Yeah. You have those fish built under you. That little 50, 100-yard radius, the commotion, you're not going to catch a fish. You got to go find your own spot. Go a little further, go 100, 200 yards away, but you're really wasting your time anchoring next to somebody who's already got a bite established.
Right. I mean, they just gang up on all the bait, and as long as you keep feeding them, you're in a good spot. I think it's funny though that you mentioned, you can't really say anything. I've been on boats where, you stop and you're on, and like, I'm talking a party boat, and we're there 20 minutes. I'm thinking you just had 30 people dropping crabs for 15, 20 minutes. Why are you leaving? Like, just stick around for a couple minutes, because you're drawing everything in there, and all it's going to take is one fish to start going, and then the next fish is going to start going, and the next fish and then it's going to be nonstop. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. And build a bite means be willing to spend some money on bait or catch a lot of bait and be willing to expend it all during the day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes a lot of bait if you're going to get any fish.
Yeah, we went through, and again, G's on. We went through almost a bushel today.
Yeah.
Well, greens or whites?
Greens.
That's a lot of crabs.
Whites are good my opinion only, when the water gets a little cooler or if you're fishing deeper. But I think that scent with the greens, I had a video a year ago, 2 years ago, where I went through my crab selections, greens, whites, Asians, hermits, and I gave the pros and cons of each. And if I ended the video with, if you put a gun to my head, out of all those choices of crabs, if you only had one crab you could use for the rest of your life, what would it be? I would use greens. They have great scent. They're sturdy. They're hardy. They last, right? The whites, you put them in your trap for 2 days, they're all dead. I would keep greens.
Yeah, greens they're like some demons from some other realm. I mean, first of all, they smell horrendous.
And the smell doesn't leave after you shower. I mean, it's unbelievable. No. And that slime doesn't leave either.
No, it's like this oily whatever coat. It's like if you dump Procure or Dr. Juice or something on your hands where it just kind of sticks there. And no matter what you do, you can still feel it on there. I actually bought some the other day. Not the other day. Last week, I was going 2 days in a row. And I went fishing the week before and I bought some crabs. And I totally forgot them in the bucket. Now, for those that have watched the show before it came on Salt Strong, I have a habit of leaving crabs in containers, shrimp, everything in my truck, and it smells horrible. Well, I did leave it in the truck. So I'm out 2 days later driving in my truck, and I still have everything loaded into the back because I'm going to go kayak fishing, and I'm going to go for tog, and I hear some scratching. I'm like, oh my God, I got vermin in here. And I turn around and it's the green crabs are still alive 2 days later in the bucket in the back. So luckily they didn't die. They lasted another 2 days. So there was just 4 days, no salt water or anything. And I used them on the next trip. I mean, they're just hardy as heck. But I gotta.
What do you use besides them? Because you said you decided on greens. What would the normal choice be?
Yeah, so I use greens. I will use shrimp and sand fleas.
Okay.
And those are it. Well, actually, that's not necessarily the order that I would use them. I would use the sand fleas before the shrimp because shrimp just catches everything, and you end up getting a lot of junk fish that way. But I definitely go with greens first. Asian crabs are fine. My problem is I drive 2 hours to go fishing, so I don't want to go and stop on a beach and start flipping rocks and catching them on my own. I'd rather go in and spend $20 and get a couple of dozen or 3 dozen, bought crabs, and they don't sell Asian crabs in the areas that I'm going to. So we got James Flynn. Rich, please clean your truck. My truck is immaculate at the moment.
Right now.
Yeah. It's partly because of the incident with the crabs that I cleaned it out again. So, all right. So green crabs are your first. Let's say you can't get green crabs. What's your second bait that you're getting?
I have 2 choices by me, greens and whites. So default whites. I mean, you can get hermits too. Hermits are probably the best if you want to catch tog. But the problem with hermits is every sea bass and porgy in a 100-yard radius will find your boat if you use hermits. Yeah. Which is why I tell people I don't want to see hermits on the boat. Because then everybody starts catching those fish, and that's not what we're going after.
Right. It's like the people using glow jigs when they're out fishing offshore and they start catching the dogfish and they ruin it for everyone. I know some people are going to get mad at that. They like their glow jigs, but they're jigging and actively working a glow jig, and that can have some adverse effects out there, especially if they throw clam on it or something like that. All right, so you're using greens and whites. Depths of water is going to be somewhere around, let's say, 15 to 30 feet, or 10 to 30 feet, typically.
10 to 40. 10 to 40.
10 to 40?
Not that makes a huge difference, but yes.
Well, it does make a difference, though.
We had actually 3 10-pounders last charter season in that 35 to 40 foot range, all on 1 ounce or less.
Okay. Now, what are you using? So we already talked about the line. You're using 10-pound braid, but let's talk about the gear for people that want to get into this. So what are you using for
noodle?
A noodle?
Noodle. Anyone who's fished with me in the last 2 or 3 years knows how I feel about this. You need as soft a tip and as light a rod as possible. My opinion, and I'm not fishing wrecks. I am a firm believer in the more sensitive the rod. And a lot of people confuse a stiff tip with a sensitive tip. I'm talking about a rod so light that you can actually feel the difference between a big fish moving with it and the small fish just chomping on it. And I feel that sensitivity, that ability to tell the difference gets lost with heavier and a lot of my clients will come on the boat and say, oh, look at this. I got a light action jigging rod. And I'll look at it, I'll go, nope, that's not going to work. You need something really light and really soft tip.
So are you looking at something that's more of a medium action or a slow action as opposed to a medium fast or a fast? So it's really the light rod with a slower action.
Right.
Okay.
So a Tsunami Slim Wave would be their medium would be and that's Skinner used that for years in his light tackle jigging videos. I've partnered with a company called VRC. We've been working on rods for 2 years now. They're not quite out on the market, but the rod I use, and I've been doing phenomenal with it. I really feel like I'm one with this rod right now.
Yeah.
When I show it to people, like Nino, one of your guests, he calls me Captain Noodle now. Like, he doesn't understand how I use that rod, but I do great with it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And for me, it's not about the bites. I balance that rod in my hand, and I have a 2000 Tsunami Evict 10-pound braid, really light reel, really light rod. But that Tsunami has decent stopping power.
Right.
It's a really good, affordable reel. I'm not a person that buys, the Stellas and the super expensive Daiwas and pens. $149 and you get a great reel. I've had them now for 3 years. Never had an issue with any of them. And I balance it in my hand, and I ignore all those little taps, and I really wait for that it's like the seesaw. I'm waiting for that rod to go down, like it's going to come out of my hand, and that's my cue to set as hard as I can.
Okay. All right.
So that actually, what you just said plays into this question from Captain Leon. Why do you gravitate towards the spinning and not like a bait caster?
So let me give Captain Leon a plug for a second. If any of you have not checked out his channel, you need to. And he has one of the best lighthouse videos. It's one of my favorite videos of all time on YouTube about my local lighthouse in Greenport, Bug Light. Check it out. I promise you will love it. For me, it's easier to get down with the spinner. I feel like I have to pull when I'm using a small, and look, Skinner has a different reason. I forgot what it was, why he doesn't like it, something with the way he sets. But for me, I always found it easier to unspool a spinner with a half-ounce jig if I'm going down 35 feet than trying to, with a little bait caster, trying to pull it out.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah, for fluke fishing, I'm fine with the bait caster, but I'm not fine with it for tog. And I tried it for a while. Actually, all last year I tried it with the bait caster, and I liked it. And then I switched back this year, and I was like, I don't know why I thought I liked it, because I like this a lot more.
Well, I think you questioned me last year too. You're like, why are you using that? I'm like, because it's easier.
Yeah. And you were right. There's another question here. How long of a 30-pound leader are you using when you're like gear fishing? From Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, probably 4 foot is the average. It's just in case you get pulled sideways, that you have a little bit of, and again, if I were fishing a wreck, you would need longer leader. But the small boulder beds I'm fishing, and again, Skinner has underwater video of Blackfish. Those are the waters I fish. You'll see it. You're not talking about, any type of crazy structure. It's little boulder beds.
Yeah. Ed, what are you using?
I don't know. A couple, I'll stretch when I'm tying it on. I'll stretch my arms out like twice. So two lengths. I don't even know.
Wow.
You're about 6 feet.
But I guess. That's what?
12 feet. What
you're saying. About 12 feet.
Oh, you're doing this twice.
Yeah, so I'll stretch it and then stretch it again and then tie it on. So
yeah, I shouldn't be surprised, because I do about 10 feet. And the reason is I tie an FG knot. I don't want to continually retie it, and I'm fine reeling it through the guides. So we get a lot of snags. And I have it so that it's, like I said before, it's not breaking at the braid. It's breaking somewhere on the leader. It's cutting on the leader. So I don't want to keep retying that FG knot all throughout the day, especially in the kayak. If I'm fishing from the rocks, from the shore, then I'll just do a short leader because that's not a big deal when you're just standing there. It's a lot easier to tie. But I would say I go way over and go 10 feet just so that I can not have to change out the entire leader. I can just retie a new jig on there.
So to that point, Larry just asked about leader to main line knots or hardware. I've gone away mostly from hardware, although again, Skinner uses 50-pound Spro or Tsunami barrel swivels, which actually will go through the guide easier than some mono to braid knots. But I'm number one, I'm a creature of habit, but for me, it takes me 10 seconds to tie an improved cinch to a cinch knot, improved cinch on the braid, cinch on the fluoro. And I know hardly anybody does that, but I tie it so fast and it doesn't break, and I just stick with that.
Yeah.
And I get how smooth the FG knot is, but I'm not going to I can't do that when it's windy out and I'm trying to do all those wraps. For me, it's, I can't do it either. What I'm saying, but it works.
Well, you just got to do what works. I mean, just because I do the FG doesn't mean that everybody should do the FG. It's just I'm confident in the way that I tie it. I can tie it without it coming apart in the dark. I can tie it without looking at it. So it's just what I've gotten used to doing. And look, it takes about a minute to a minute and a half. So it's not a ton of time, but when you're on the water and you just pulled a fish in or you just lost one, you want to get back in right away.
You got the jitters, your hands are shaking. You want to get back in the fish.
Yeah. I've got this whole weird setup of how on the kayak, I have the rod in one spot, got the line in my teeth. I have to have a weight of the spool on the leader. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
That's too much for me.
Yeah, but I use the FG knot. You can use uni to uni. You can do it the way John's doing it. Ed, what are you using?
Alberto.
Okay. So Alberto knot. But I do not use hardware. So Skinner likes the barrel swivels. I do not. I do not like anything that is going to be a hard surface to snag on anything. Plus, I like to be able to reel the leader onto the reel. So I don't want to worry. I don't want to have to worry about reeling a barrel swivel into the guides at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's
I get that, but those 50 pounds are so small.
Yeah, they are.
But I totally get it. Right, you're going through your ceramic guides. It's not the best thing for them. No.
Right. You just hear the click. And
freaks you out.
Cringe.
I get it.
Yeah. It's like on the chalkboard.
Yeah. Whether you need to be upset by it or not, it's a little disturbing to me. Now, let's see, there were some other questions in here. Go ahead, Ed.
What knots are you guys using to attach your jig to your leader?
I'll let John go.
1 or 2, a surgeon's loop, or just a cinch knot.
Okay.
Ed?
And the surgeon's only if I think I'm going to be changing out. What I found is if I put a 3/4 ounce on, that might last me 2 trips. I'm not going to. And I have a little more confidence that the cinch knot, and whether there's any truth to this or not, is less prone to, chafe against the rock and break. I don't know why. I always have that feeling in the back of my head that the surgeon's loop somehow is going to, fall between a rock and just get sliced.
Yeah. No, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, what are you doing?
I tie a Palomar for the jig to the leader.
Mm-hmm. I'm just doing a loop knot, a regular loop knot, so it takes like 2 seconds. And I think it breaks easily when I'm snagged. And again, I'd rather lose the jig and keep the leader. So I think it's and when I tie it, I don't tie a big loop on the bottom. I actually keep it very tight. So it may be, just I mean, an eighth of an inch loop at the bottom is what I have. So it lets it still swing freely, but it's close enough to the eye of the hook that I feel it's not going to create any additional snags. So that's what I do. But the real reason I do it is just because I can tie it so quickly. It's just one overhand knot, and then you don't tighten it. You just pull it back through itself, twist it around twice, pull it through again, and you're done. And that's why I do it.
The Palomar's even quicker than that. It's a loop through, overhand knot, pull the jig through the loop, and then pull it tight.
Yeah.
Look into it.
Yeah. I try to stick with the same thing because that's what I use on when I'm tossing out paddle tails. So I can just consistently tie the same thing. I just tie it with a smaller loop, so it's not it's not as big of a loop right above the head. Let's see. There are a bunch of questions, but before we get into those, let's talk about the bite. You talked a little bit about it, John, and I think that is the big thing when you're talking light tackle / inshore / you're overrun with tons of smaller fish, and you got the big guys mixed in. Let's talk about the bite. So what are you looking for in that bite before you're setting that hook?
The pull, the where you feel like the fish is swimming away with it, and that's the reason we use these really light jigs, is because the bigger fish, they see the commotion, they see the burgals, the porgies, the small blackfish, pop, 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 pecking away, biting it, hitting it. Big fish bruises in, pushes them out of the way. And on the trip today, I told the guys, it's like the calm before the storm. You'll get those, and then all of a sudden, there's one thump, and it's almost like a delayed reaction. And what I think is happening is the big fishes come in, cleared out the little fish, and there's almost a pause in those light taps, and then you feel your line moving. And again, with the light rod, I'm not concerned about trying to feel the line. I'm letting the rod tell me. The rod bends over, you set the other way, and you've weeded out 10, 12 small fish, and you've caught the keeper. And I think that's why some people sometimes struggle with this, because they can't tell that difference, or they don't have the patience for it.
Yeah, they're swinging on everything.
Not on everything, because I know from personal experience with clients, I tell them ignore the small bites, and I'll see, they're ignoring, and then they'll get one harder bite and they'll set on that, and it's still a small fish. It's really that pull, what we call swimming away with the jig.
Right. You'll see the line start to move left to right.
And what size? This was a question in there. I don't see who asked it. What's the average size? Oh, there, Ben. What's the average size fish that you're getting when you're waiting for that big fish to swim off with it?
Yeah. So to be clear, we're catching a ton of shorts too, and that's why the style I'm talking about. If you're fishing an area where there's only big fish, you might as well just use a heavier rod, a more traditional setup, because at that point it defeats the purpose of the noodle rod, because the noodle rod is meant to help you discern between all those small fish and the big fish. Average keeper size 16 to 20 inches. We had 28 today. We had about 20 yesterday. Big fish on the day, usually 5.5 to 6.5 pounds. But last year, we had 3 10-pounders. We had our subscriber trip where one of the subscribers, Annette, had an 11.5-pounder.
That's a nice fish.
And again, on a really, really, really light rod.
On a noodle, on a swim wave type noodle.
And the rod length is, I see the other question. I'm just jumping ahead, Rich.
Yeah, go ahead.
6 feet. That's my preferred rod length. That's what I designed my rod. The rod that I used for years, besides the Slim Wave, was a St. Croix Triumph 6 foot medium. And again, because I'm balancing the rod, I don't want a long rod. I also find it's easier to pitch it when I'm near a jetty, when I'm near a lighthouse, when I'm near structure. if I'm casting up to something, just easier to manage a smaller rod. But the critical thing for me is having that balance, using it almost like a pendulum on your hand to be able to tell when it's time to set the hook.
Yeah. And if you're on shore, I would say you want a rod that is going to be just long enough to help you stay over the tip of that jetty or that structure. So sometimes you do need a longer rod there. Let's say you're fishing straight down on bridge pilings from the bridge or from a pier, you might need a longer. So it really depends in that case. On a kayak, I'm always going to say I would prefer to use a 6-foot rod if I'm jigging, but on my kayak, because of the length of it, I need to comfortably get that rod tip around the front without, too much leaning and too much trouble. I use a 7 to 7.6. 7.2 seems to be the sweet spot for me, but shorter rods, if you can get away with it, I love the shorter rods for this type of fishing. Definitely. Ed, what are you using? You're still using the 7.6, right?
7 foot. I have a Jigging World. Yeah, I have the Jigging World Nexus. And then I have the one that John Creeley just made for me that I just got back. And I think that's 7. That might be 7.6. I'm not sure. I have to double check that one.
All right. Let's see. Are there any other questions that we've missed in there?
No, I've been trying to star them as we go.
Gotcha. So, John, is there anything that we're missing right now?
It's such a limited topic. It's not like our first discussion where we talked about a million things.
Right.
We went over the noodle rod. We went over the line, the crabs, the structure. And you know what?
How about the jigs?
Well, I use S&S John Skinner hog jigs. I love them. Great luck with them. They hold up. I'll use the same jig 2-3 trips in a row. But really, everybody makes good jigs, I feel, at this point. Ed, example right in front of us. I don't think that's as critical, my personal opinion. But what we were talking about wear before, the other thing we forgot to mention is you'd be surprised how many docks hold Blackfish. And our good friend Doc, his marina, we catch blackfish there all the time. If it's rough out, we will just go to his dock in the inlet here in Mattatuck. And there will be multiple keepers every trip just dropping straight down by the pilings.
It saves on the gas bill.
Oh, tremendously, especially since we both have big twin engine boats. Yes.
Yeah.
Doc's boat, awesome. That thing's crazy. You've seen that boat, right, Rich? That's the metal shark, right?
That's Rick. Doc's got a 30-foot scarab.
Okay. I get those two mixed up.
Yeah. Well, they're both about 85 years old. It happens a lot. Take shots at both of them right now.
I'm not taking any shots. No offense to you guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to take any shots at your crew, John. But I'll take shots at you.
True story. Rick's in his 60s. I don't think he's ashamed for me to admit that. But we were in a Blackfish tournament on his boat a few weeks ago. And a guy sat down who recognized us from the Skinner videos and talking to us. And Rick got up to get something. And the guy said, how old is Rick? And I said, he's 82. And the guy was like, wow, he looks and moves good for 82. He totally believed it. I make a lot of jokes to Rick about him being an octogenarian. And again, he's not. But
well, that's what makes it so much fun. But then he can sit down and make you do everything for him.
Right, yeah. And every fish he catches is a keeper, even at 12 inches. He doesn't keep them, but yeah.
So, to go back to the jig thing, there's the old, classic debate, color catches, fishermen, not fish. What are your thoughts?
Agree. Not for Blackfish. I think that's I see customers come with just plain. That Thursday trip I was on, there's a gentleman named Elliot Sanchez, excellent fisherman. He's a chef, actually. Just using he was using bigger jigs, but just plain metal jigs. And I've seen customers with no color on them do just as well as, and I can't tell the difference when I'm using a green jig, an orange jig. Again, this is all my opinion.
Yeah. I think there is a little bit.
That wasn't the answer I was hoping for.
I'm sorry, Ed.
Well, I think that for the most part, the colors do catch the fisherman. There are some colors that I have noticed I seem to do better on. I don't know if I'm just more confident in them. They're more of the natural colors. Ed, actually, there's 2 colors that I told him I want everything in these 2 colors. And I don't care which one it is, but one is a black, looks like a mussel. And the other one is it looks almost like a a calico crab color, so they look more natural in the water. But I've stopped using the oranges and all those. I have found that I think orange and the brighter colors, I catch a lot more sea bass and extra, bycatch that I'm not really looking for.
So, it's funny. I had a customer order they're hot pink and blue to stock in his shop. And he says those are the only colors when you're out 80, 100 feet that stay true to their color. I don't know.
Could be. But for today, we're talking light tackle, shallow water.
Right.
Stick to the topic, Ed. Come on,
Ed.
I'm just trying to keep the color debate alive.
Are you new here? You new here?
For the record, I had a lot of keepers today, all on orange, but I'm agnostic. It might as well have been green. I have both.
Yeah, and again, Ed, I'll go halfway in and I'll say, it's what a lot of it is what you're confident in.
I'd agree.
If you think that you're better with a certain color. Like, John, if you were to, I know you're not, but if you were to turn around and say, you know what, I just feel really good about orange, you're probably going to do better on orange because you're going to be more in tune with what you're doing. You're not going to be thinking, well, do I have the wrong color on there? I never catch on this. You're just going to be confident you're going to be doing your thing. I honestly believe that with almost every type of fishing. If you have a confidence bait or a confidence color or a confidence rod, even though it probably, in some cases doesn't matter, it matters to you, and that's all that matters. In the end, it's going to help you. So, how's that?
I feel that way about fluke. I don't know if I feel that way about Blackfish jigs, but that's about colors. That's just me. I'm agnostic. But I get what you're saying because I definitely feel that way about style of fluke fishing. If I'm fishing a way I'm not used to, even if it works, I'm not going to have the confidence.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, there are certain things where I'll be next to Ed and he'll be like, just do this. I'm like, I can't catch a fish on that. People are like, use this. I'm like, I can't because I will never catch a fish on that. And I know it's because I don't believe I will, not because I can't. It's because I don't believe I will. So I'm going to use something else that I'm more comfortable with. And, it's either that or get good and get confident because I think the fish can feel, and to your point, you probably don't feel the same way about tog because it's bait fishing. You're not moving that bait. You're trying to keep it still. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're popping it every once in a while, but so I can see your point there. Here's a question, Ed and John. Let's hear your opinions on this. Does the shape of the jig matter for deeper waters? Let's just start off. Does the shape of the jig matter?
I'll go first. I think the shape of the hook matters. Mm-hmm. I don't know so much the shape of the jig itself.
You stole my answer, Ed.
Sorry.
Okay, so go ahead. Go talk more about it.
So for the longest time, most jig makers are using a Mustad 2X circle round bend hook, standard, industry standard. Recently, we switched up into using more of a sickle style. With the tog, they have that big giant rubber lip. So when you set the hook, the way it drives the angle, and it has the sickle hook has a smaller wire diameter, so it's going to be a sharper point and it'll penetrate easier. So that's what we've switched to. And I mean, Rich, you've used them. You can kind of speak to the abilities on those. But I think the hook matters more so than the design of the weight.
All right. And John, you agree that the hook, but what's your thought on the hook? You might have a different perspective.
Completely different from Ed's. I don't disagree with the sickle. I saw them for the first time a couple of weeks ago. My buddy Todd Mann actually made some with sickle hooks. I'd never seen that on a Blackfish jig. Yeah. But I noticed, and I don't know if it was you, again, he asked the question, or if it was Abu today, but they were using smaller, like the shank wasn't as long. And I didn't like that, because I like to get that crab, in one socket, out another. And I just felt like that smaller shank would have made it a little difficult to kind of get that the point of the hook showing through it, so that when they bite it, you have a better chance of hooking them. Again, uninformed opinion here, but I personally didn't like that. And I like that about the SNS jigs, that they have a slightly longer shank. And I just feel more confident, to your point, Rich, when I'm baiting up with them.
Yeah. I'd say that the shape, my answer is the shape of the jig does matter, because certain shapes can get snagged easier than others. But God only knows what shape is going to get snagged over any given structure. You don't know. So yes, it does matter, but there's not a lot you can do about it.
For what it's worth, I only ordered the banana style jigs.
Banana. Okay. As far as the hook, I love the sickle hooks for inshore and light tackle, because you're using smaller baits. And I think the sickle works well to go in one socket and out the other. If I'm offshore, I'm not using a sickle on a 2-ounce jig, because the crabs are too big for it to go in one socket and out the other. It just kind of gets lost in there. You can't make the turn on a sickle, because it's a shorter diameter around that bend. So Ed and I have talked about this. But I do love the sickle, because I do love hooking these fish inshore on the light tackle in the lip, in that rubber lip, because once it's in there, it just doesn't come out. And it does allow you to use a smaller diameter hook, which I like. So, and a big part of that is if you're using Asian shore crabs or small greens, if you want to actually put it in the leg socket, they're very thin. So it'll actually fit through there a lot easier than some of these bigger hooks, where you just kind of have to blast, and then it ends up breaking the socket when it goes through. So,
well, that, and also the presentation, the way when you use the smaller crabs with the sickle hook, it'll keep the crab basically floating over top of the jig. Yeah. So the jig kind of goes out of at least the colors of the jig kind of are out of the equation at that point, because, the crab is taking center stage.
Yeah. If you're using a whole crab, that's, I think it's better. All right. Well, anything else that we've missed before we call this one, guys?
No, I think we got pretty much everything.
John, I want to thank you for coming on, man. This is
always fun, man.
This is great, and we keep getting I keep getting messages saying, well, let's get some more tog stuff. Let's get some more striped bass stuff. Let's keep talking the Mid-Atlantic. And I've got a bunch of people that were saying, well, we got to cover the Chesapeake. It's the largest, it's got the most shoreline in the United States. You got to be covering it. So I want to let people know that next week we have Sean Kimbrough coming up. He is a very popular author, Chesapeake Light Tackle, Intro to Light Tackle Fishing on the Chesapeake Bay. He's got another book I don't recall off the top of my head. He's got a YouTube channel, does a lot of seminars on striped bass in the Chesapeake Bay, and he's coming on next week, and he's going to dive deep into how to get out there right now and get on the fish in the Chesapeake. So if any of you watching live on the replay and the podcast know anybody who goes out in the Chesapeake, this one's going to be for you guys. And then, John, we got to get out there because we missed our chance earlier this year because of the weather that blew us out. But we've got to get out there on the water and get some fish up there. I got to let me know when you have an opening, and I'll see if I can pull a charter together.
Yeah, I get a week off I have a week off in November with 9 straight charters in a row.
Yeah. I know I can't get on for Tog. I know that's the impossible one, but maybe there might be a fluke thing that comes.
No, but I listen. If there's a cancellation or somebody just needs a fill in, I'll let you know, because I think you'll really enjoy this. For me, it's the most fun. It's just a lot of fun, and we're gonna noodle you up when you show up.
I'm down.
Leave your 7-foot Nexus at home. Don't bring any rods with you.
I'll bring a noodle.
I actually, John, I do have some that I'd like to show you that are old custom rods that I think would be perfect for it.
Okay.
So I'd like to test them out, and whether we break them or not, it'll be fun to just test them out and see how they work out. But I think I got some noodles that'll stand up to the test. It'll be fun. And if we break a bunch of rods, then we can all just laugh about it.
Yeah.
We'll just make it fun. All right. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Again, next week, we're going to have Sean Kimbrough on. And after that, coming up weeks after, not to say who, we're going to go through striped bass trolling tactics and techniques. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in the near future, all covering the Mid-Atlantic. Just think, and we'll even go further south, but we're focusing right now on the Mid-Atlantic and the fall fishing. So stick around, come back. It will be on Monday next week. It's going to go back to Monday nights at 8:00. So until then, till next week, until next episode, everyone get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was